What's happening, people? Dan Lawless here for West Ham Fan TV, and I'm going to attempt to give you my player ratings for Brighton 1, West Ham United 1. Always difficult to do player ratings. It's based on what you think each number's value is. Is a 7 out of 10 good, or is it sort of average? You know, is a 4 terrible, or is it, you know, just a bit okay? It depends on what value you place on each number, but I'm going to attempt to give my player ratings. A few people asking about where I got the t-shirt from. We got a brand new t-shirt range out now. These are our t-shirts, West Ham Fan TV. Link is down below in the description or the comments. So have a look and check it out. But let's get bang into the player ratings. I'm going to get through these. Starting off with Fabianski, difficult one. He made some good saves. He pulled off some pretty decent saves. There's a few sort of simple ones, but it's not like he was pulling off, you know, amazing save after amazing save. Whether he could have done better for the goal, I'm not completely sure. It was quite a difficult one. I think his view was slightly obstructed. But, do you know, I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10, slightly above average. Ryan Fredericks, I thought, actually, for the most part, defensively was quite good. And I've been impressed with him defensively because he has that pace to get back and put in a tackle, and he's not someone who really gives away a lot of fouls. He can, you know, poke the ball out of their feet, whether it's putting out for a throw or winning the ball back. I do like him defensively. Going forward, he's got the pace, but there's a few just little bits of quality in terms of delivery or decision making with the final ball that I'm not too sure about. So I'm going to give him a 6. I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10. Issa Diop made a few good tackles, but I thought was quite poor at times and should have done better for their goal. Decision making there, quite poor. Got slightly muscled out by Glenn Murray. Then it gets passed back to Trosser. I think it's Trosser. For the goal, which ultimately the next guy I'm going to talk about was massively poor for. So I'm going to say Diop. I'm going to give Diop a 4. I'm going to Diop a 4 today. Let me know if you think these are harsh numbers and what your numbers are for each player. Angelo Ogbonna, I thought, had a really poor game today. Massively at fault, or, you know, done really poor for their goal, for that Trosser. Didn't close down Trosser at all. Backed off, stood off of him. Gave him so much space. And that's a big problem with West Ham. We give opposition players too much space. And Ogbonna is as guilty of that as anyone, really, for giving players too much space and standing off and not being proactive and closing them down enough. I thought he was quite poor today. Got caught ball watching a couple of times as well. So I'm going to give Ogbonna a 2, you know. Masuaku, you know what? It's funny, I just said that Ogbonna could be the worst player on the pitch. Masuaku was pretty poor himself. I mean, we are so lucky for VAR because that goal that they scored, what was Masuaku doing? He was just a passenger. He was completely gormless, just ball watching. There's 2 players there, right, beside him. Just off of him, right? Just off to the angle, just off to the left of him, behind him in a way. 2 players that you could just have marked, right? Either one of them, you think, right, you're standing there and you think, right, okay, so the ball's going to come over. They're going to pass it to someone. They're aiming to pass it to someone. You watching them and watching the ball is going to do nothing, because if that ball goes over your head, mate, and someone's there, which is what happened, someone's there to head it in, get free header. All you have to put some pressure on the players. And I thought marking seems to be a weakness of ours in general. But anyway, you know what? I'm going to give him a 2. I want to say he's up there with Ogbonna. I mean, that could be harsh on both of them. I was inclined to go 3, but I'm going to go 2. Declan Rice, I thought he was one of our better players. It weren't one of his best performances, but he was one of the players that really was just giving it his all. Really, you know, putting in the tackles, trying to win the ball back, putting in passes, trying to make passes, and there was a pass he made where Snodgrass, we get into, just stood there and wasn't trying to come forward and collect the ball. So I felt put bad for him in terms of there was a lot of things he was trying to do and it just didn't work out. I mean, he had a horrendous shot in the first half, unbelievably just poor. He must have just thought, this is my moment to be a hero, as the ball sort of come to him and smashes it right into Rose Ed. I'm going to give Declan Rice a 7. Robert Snodgrass, I thought wasn't great today. Like I said, he just had that moment where he was just too static. Wasn't a typical Snodgrass work his arse off type of performance. I wouldn't say he was lazy throughout the game, but there was a few instances of that. I'd give Snodgrass a 4. I don't think he was down there with one of the worst players, but I'll give him a 4. Jack Wilshere came off at half time. I think his fitness is being managed, so I'm judging him based on 45 minutes, which was that first 45 minutes was our worst 45 minutes. It was one of his less... It was one of Jack Wilshere's sort of less impactful games than we've seen recently for Jack Wilshere. He had a few sparks, but that half was mainly all Brighton. I'm going to go Jack Wilshere based on the first half. I'm going to go for 4 out of 10. For Nows, for quite non-existent for most of the game. Early on, he sort of had quite an impact. What I like about him is he fights to keep hold of the ball. He will fight to keep hold of that ball. A few instances are looking really good. Gets ganged up on. He was getting ganged up on quite a lot, as I mentioned in my instant match reaction. No support received. Came off at 77th minute. But yeah, I would say for Nows, I'm going to give a 3. Lanzini. Actually, you know what? Lanzini, I have to say, was probably our best player actually today. Looking back on it, so I'm going from player. So when I'm giving Rice a 7, and then I'm looking on at Lanzini, I think was our best player. First half again getting ganged up on, but was our most quality player. The player that anything good seemed to be happening with through Lanzini. So I'm going to give him a 7.5. Man of the match for Lanzini. Hernandez, pretty non-existent apart from the goal. Didn't do much. Couldn't do much. It was well-timed run for Hernandez. Stayed on side. Usually that's a problem for him. Stayed on side. Had a shot. Luckily, the keeper got a glove to it, but luckily ends up in the back of the net and no defender picks it up. But other than that, pretty non-existent. But based on the goal, I'm gonna only give him a 7. Gets us a point just by scoring the goal, and I'll give him a 7. Substitutions. First, Antonio changed the game coming on. Absolutely changed the game in the second half. Should have started. Absolutely should have started. Worked his arse off. He was when we started winning the corners, and I think that's probably down to him as well. We started winning corners. He was a threat. And he added some much needed energy and pace to the game. It's hard to judge when you're having to judge players who've played one half versus a full game. But based on his impact, I'll give Antonio a 7. Yarmolenko, another one. It's hard to really judge him. Again, we looked better when he came on. He sort of added a little something, but didn't get to do too much. I'm going to give him a 5 out of 10. And Carlos Sanchez, I will give a 5 out of 10. I was a bit surprised about that substitution. Seems to be that he was just shoring up the point, really. Manuel Pellegrini, as the manager, I'm going to give a 3 out of 10. Lineup, I think he got it wrong. He dropped Balbuena for Ogbonna, which was a bit strange. Whether there's something we don't know, I'm not sure. And not starting Antonio and starting like Snodgrass, or it was, I think, a very, very poor decision. And had Antonio started, we might have got all 3 points, and we might have had a bit more energy about us in the first half. So I think ultimately it was a poor decision from him, but it was a good decision to make that substitution for Antonio early on and do it straight at the second at halftime. I do like that he doesn't. He will, if need be, make that change at halftime. Let me know what your player ratings are. Are mine too harsh? Who have I got wrong? Let me know. Again, it's difficult to do these, but I want your player ratings down below. Do look out for all the other content. Post-match pint will be up Sunday afternoon. One thing left to say. Come on, you Irons.